Eddie, do me a favor. Give me some good advice on measuring your risk.
Documentation is key. If you can create a risk taxonomy, a control catalog, and then identify owners of each control, good starting point to measuring risk.
Oh, that's some good advice. Freddie, do the opposite for me. Give me some bad advice on measuring your risk. Oh, your audio is off. You're muted. There's no software on.
I blew it already? Damn.
No, do it again. Give me some bad advice.
Yeah, bad advice. I would say panic indexing. That would be great. Like check Twitter, check sentiment analysis, and that's a great place for scoring your risk.
All right. And Eddie, could you give me some worse advice on
turn on
scoring your risk, measuring it?
Copilot to see if it can pretend whether or not that advice that Freddie just gave is adequate for a financial institution.
Oh, sure that's some really bad advice. Let's start this.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Welcome, everybody. Today's topic is hacking your risk. We're focusing on your risk because we care about you. An hour of critical thinking of all the things you look at to find out what is specifically important to you. Hey, our two guests today, and this is great. It says Edward and Federico, but they go by Eddie and Freddie. We're going to be doing this all the day, and it won't get boring. Trust me, you'll love it. It's Eddie Contreras, who's the senior EVP and CISO over at Frost Bank, and also Freddie Hakimini. You know what, Freddie, how do you pronounce your last name? Do that for me. Hakimini. Freddie Hakimini, technology evangelist over at Exonius. Huge thanks to Exonius. They are our sponsor for today's episode, and they've been a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series. All right. Let's just quickly go through this. Many of you are regulars, but this is for those of you who are new. Lots of different ways to participate. Just take a look at that. We have the chat room. We have the best bad idea, worst way to prioritize your cybersecurity risks. So we want your worst way to determine how you should prioritize. You heard some bad ideas. Maybe you can come up with worse ones. But we also want the 10% better tips, how to better contextualize your cyber risk. Remember, hashtag bad idea for the bad idea. Hashtag 10P for the 10% better tips. The reason you do that is sometimes it's hard to tell, is this good advice or bad advice? Believe it or not, it does happen. You can join us on video with just typing Bring Me On. Our producer, Josh, who's working, will help as best as he can and ask questions of our guests. Yes, please do that. Please do that a lot. There's a little question mark icon in the on the right-hand side where the icons are. Click on that and write your question, and you can even vote on your question. All right. Same schedule we've been doing lately. We'll play Best Bad Idea, 10% Better. We'll play the Public Interest, Department of Yes. We'll have our final questions answer, and then we will do our meetup, which is on Discord. If you don't have a Discord account, get one, and it's a lot of fun. So I want to see you there. Please come to our meetup. All right. We are not going to have a show next week because RSA is all next week, and there's no way we're going to promote during next week. So we're skipping that week, and we're going all the way to May 9th for hacking the validity of Gen AI. The link to do that, you see at the very bottom of the screen, just appeared. Good job, Josh. Click on that, and any time during the show will not take you out of the show, and you can register for the one in 2 weeks and still be part of the show as well. And that we will get to later. That's our meetup. That'll come back later. All right. Let's talk about the subject at hand. Here's my question. Security is growing at a ludicrously rapid pace. The amount of stuff we are trying to protect is going up. The attacks are going up. Does that mean risk keeps going up? Like, what does it mean? If everything's going up, what's happening to risk? I'll start with you, Eddie.
You know, if you have a really good understanding of your landscape, regardless of what you place on that landscape, it typically doesn't grow that much more. So if you think about growing your technology stack, growing your user base, or growing additional services, if you have a really good view of your landscape, you probably are not introducing that much more risk. And as long as you're categorizing what risk is. I'll give you an example. Passwords. Well, you can break passwords down to like probably 4 or 5 different categories. And if the reality is, I just want to be able to manage one specific category around a password, whether or not you introduce continuous authentication, multi-factor authentication, endpoint agents, none of that really changes the fact that the risk is still a portion of that authentication process. So I think categorization around risk helps minimize the growth of the landscape.
So would it be appropriate to, I'm hyper simplifying what you said, but as long as you're managing it, the volume quote doesn't matter?
Yeah, I don't think it does. I don't think the volume matters. And I think there's complications that are added to the risk environment already, but it's not like you can be more risky because of something. So if I have $50 in my pocket and I have a hole in my pocket and I have a fire on my jeans and still at risk is $50, right? And so the risk there is still the same, even though you've introduced more ways you can lose it. The landscape is still, well, how do I, keep the $50 in my pocket?
Freddie, agree, disagree? What's your thoughts?
I agree in direction. I partially agree. Agree with pattern matching and like starting to see those things like into groupings and like doing a great job of doing that helps a bunch. But I mean, every time, let's say there's a password, I mean, one thing is having that password. The other thing is like bringing another vendor to the queue, right? I start thinking about like Shadow IT and says every day, everyone like signing up to a service and saying, let's do business over there because it's awesome and it's free. It kind of creates new ways where risk is introduced. I agree with the part where the pot can be the same, but like the pattern matching helps greatly. Actually, if anything, it's a super best practice we should be thinking about. Yeah, that there's a lot happening.
By the way, I'm going to throw this bad idea that Aman Sood just threw up here. Only fix the cheapest thing to fix first. Anything that is budget friendly is the risks we like. Well, by the way, that is a bad idea, but don't you do that anyway sometimes? Oh, this is cheap and easy to fix. Why don't we do it?
You hear the low-hanging fruit theory all the time. Just get the low-hanging fruit or the minimal viable product, or you hear that. There's some truth to it, right? It wouldn't be if less people did it.
But hold it. But it also makes you feel good. I did something. I reduced some risk. I did something.
And something's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Projects that are stuck in this, paralysis by analysis that they don't get to the solution. They've just defined the problem 50 different ways. And at the end of that, really what satisfaction do you have other than knowing that, the problem is still there?
All right. Please get your bad ideas in. We want your bad ideas. All right. So, this whole discussion is about your risk. So, I'm going to start with you, Eddie. What are your telltale signs of determining what is very specific to you, your risk within your organization, that doesn't speak to the greater risks that you see many articles and people telling you and vendors telling you, trying to scare the crap out of you, you need to worry about this?
A lot of times I identify risk based on my interactions with the business. I know cyber very well. I know technology very well. And it's not translatable, the risk across not only industries, but sometimes within the industry. You might have two banks that have completely different types of risk based on their business process. And so when I interview stakeholders, I'll typically ask them, what do you do during your 9 to 5? What is it that if something stopped happening, you're sending your team home or you're calling customers to say, hey, we're sorry, this isn't available. And then I uncover risk and we realize, okay, there's something there that we just hadn't really thought about from our perspective. I'll give a good example. There's ATMs, and ATMs are a portion of a network, and everybody here has used an ATM before. And so most people would think, well, the loss of funds would be important for an ATM ecosystem. But also a loss of availability. But then even what's more frustrating is, what if there's just not enough ATMs, right? And that could be a risk to the business. They could say, hey, the reason that we are concerned is that maybe there's only one available ATM within 20 miles of our customers. So when you hear something like that and you're thinking, okay, I'm thinking about loss of money, I'm thinking about loss of availability, and they're thinking about just more access. And then that could be, the risk we're solving for. So it is talking to the business and just bringing a different lens to the conversation.
Freddie, I'm going to ask you the same darn question. What are the variables you look at to determine your risk?
Yeah, I like to think that there are external and internal variables, and then the combination of them all is what makes what's your risk. the most straightforward way I can think about that is like you have that technical risk that's provided by someone without looking at what you have and how that relates to that. Let's say straightforward, like there's a CBSS score or percentile from EPS, and then you combine internally, like there's your asset and the state of that, or the state of the network and things like that, because sometimes like there's no even like route of attack to it. And then the business context, like many of you already said, like, hey, that actually carries a lot of significance. Like I have sensitive data, I have important things over there, and that plays a huge factor. So yeah, I like to combine those and have like a balanced approach, because like combining them all kind of gives you what truly matters to you and what's particular to you. Industry data is also amazing. It helps you with understanding your level of risk relative to the others, because I mean, of course, like the laggards are the ones who fall first, and you need to know how far you can go. But yeah, these are the things that come to my mind.
By the way, I want to give kudos to Mr. Rich Straffolino for throwing out the lamest joke right now.
I was thinking that.
Ban board games. You often claim you have eliminated all risk. That's all right.
I got a lot of psychic kind of bad advice, and I'm so hyped on that. Like, talk to a psychic, have a Ouija board. Like, there are many of those that I really dig.
Dad's got a dad joke. There you go. Okay, I want to unpack this, Louis. I don't know if I fully understand this. The way people define risk are very different, to be honest. The real challenge is ensure people align to the definition in their mind. I think what, correct me if I'm wrong, Louis, type it in, was saying is just be on the same page of what you want to protect, right, Eddie?
You assume that's easier said than done, right? You
I know, and I do know that.
But no, you're right, though. If you think, and I think there's validity to what Louis is saying, right? So, what is risk? First of all, is it availability? Is it integrity? Is it confidentiality? Where are you placing your focus on? Because people could place it differently, and so you're right. Having some type of commonality there would be helpful. What gets you to high, or your journey to the end state is going to be different. But if you all can agree on, well, once you arrive at high, does high mean the same for everybody, even though your journey to high might have been different? So I think if you can figure out where you can bring in that commonality, that it helps at least settle the conversation. But I agree, though, it's defined differently everywhere.
By the way, Eddie, I'm going to throw this comment that Gary Perkins just threw out. Risk is not an emotion. It is a formula, probability times impact. I bet you emotion gets into every discussion about risk. Yes, Freddie? How do you pull that back? Because just people's thought of things scares the crap out of them.
Honestly, it is the formula, and sticking to that and making that better. Like nothing better than algorithms to tell you with consistency, not only related to that, but also like past occurrences and how that happened, right? You build that and you keep working on that. It's of course, it shouldn't be a silver bullet, but it's a great like, hey, let's breathe in. What's our formula telling us? All right. Now, what we think about it.
I think of this as well, because what Gary's saying is absolutely great. But it also depends on where are you at with your risk metrics. Are you qualitative or quantitative?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So if you're a quants person, absolutely the formula works. If you're a qualitative person, bring in your gut, right? Okay, my gut's going to tell me something, my years of experience. I may have an override trigger on this risk formula because the quants are just not where they need to be at. But
I bet you, correct me if I'm wrong, have you been in a room where you see emotion taking over in a risk discussion?
Absolutely.
So how do you sort of bring people back to reality? Or do you go, we need a breather here? Like, how does it work?
When I'm in those conversations, I like to hear them out. I like to hear people out. Tell me what makes you nervous. I don't want to discount your fear. I want to acknowledge what you feel in your gut. And so there is ample time to describe that without losing the audience. But I also like to bring it back to, and kind of what Freddie said is, okay, let's now that I heard your feelings, let's talk a little about the data. Does the data support those feelings? Does the data available that we have either get in alignment with where your gut's at, or does it counter that? And if the data is not available, well, then now we have to prove that or disprove that, right? Then there's a journey that we have to go on. But yeah, sometimes allowing people to voice their concerns and the risk is part of that's actually part of the solution, is being able to hear that.
Yeah, you don't actually want to shut them down like, you don't need to worry about that kind of thing. You need to kind of let that play out, because it's kind of part of the brainstorming of risk. Hey, we got our first game.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right, the audience likes to play along in this game, so play along as we're about to start. As I always point out, going 4 for 4, very difficult in this game. Our wonderful Rich Stroffolino created the game for us. I have not seen it, so we're all going to play. All right, here we go. Question number 1, what gets the most average monthly search queries? Is it risk mitigation or risk register? This is a good one. Anyone want to take a stab at this one first?
I'm going to start with risk mitigation.
I'm going to agree with you on this one. I don't think enough people know what the heck a risk register is.
I would hope they do, though.
I'll go mitigation, but I'm curious if that was, it's monthly, it's okay. It's not like based on what happened last week with CBU, right? Okay.
But it looks at the last months of searches. So if something was big in this last month, and again, it's not just for cybersecurity, it's anybody searching on Google.
Yeah. I'll go A. Let's go big.
Risk mitigation. All right, let's see where we're at. We all lose.
Look at that.
Look at that.
By the way,
none of us are going over.
I'm voting shop, guys. Thanks. Nice meeting you.
By the way, most people thought like us.
Damn.
Yeah, well.
See, David, this is how it normally turns out when I'm just watching and I'm not participating. I feel like 0 for 4. So I'm stats.
Well, let's see. Let's see if you don't go 0 for 4. All right. Landscape, surface, vector. Oh, I'm going landscape.
I'm going landscape. Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking landscaping or just people.
It's springtime. Everybody's putting in flowers.
So I'm saying
I was literally browsing that yesterday. So
landscape. So all three of us are saying C?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we hold.
Some D's here.
No. Oh, my God. Vector.
Oh. And not even close.
What just blew us away. I guess vector makes more sense. And only a few E's, not that many. I don't think anyone's going to get 4 for 4 on this. I don't think anyone's going to get 2 for 4 on this. All right, we're not doing well, are we?
Or this.
All right. Analysis, assessment, effectiveness, and impact. This one is a.
I'm looking at. I'm going to follow the chat now. They seem to be doing better.
The chat doesn't know what they're talking about either. They don't have a clue.
Oh yeah, someone gave an H. No. Oh yeah, I mean H is there. Yeah, true. I
and just so you know that we changed the letters because they're a few seconds behind us, and if we kept doing AB, it would all make confusion.
Good call.
I'm watching.
I'm going to go F. I'm saying analysis.
Okay, I'm going impact.
You're going impact. What are you saying, Eddie?
I'm going G, assessment.
Okay.
Now it's going to be
possible one of us will win on this one. We're going to find out.
It's H.
G and I, both of you win. All right, I'm 0 for 3. You both have a point on the board right now. All right. But analysis, not too far behind. Effectiveness, not effective at all. There you go.
Most effective people do not need.
All right, last one. Acceptance, avoidance, tolerance, or transfer. I'm going transfer on this one.
Me too.
I'm thinking bus transfer.
See, that's what you want me to pick, David, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to break the trend here. I'm going to do acceptance.
All right. You're going with J. Freddie, you and I are going for M for transfer?
Yep.
All right. So the two of you each have 1. I've got 0. Let's see what happens. Transfer.
That was close.
Freddie wins. Freddie wins.
Yes.
Good job. All right.
I don't know if I want to be honest. Every time this game plays, I'm getting humbled. Like I think I know stuff until I see these.
I'd be stunned. So we have a 2 for 4, 1 for 4. Terrible, Amon. Sorry. There's no way anyone got 4 for 4 on that one. That one was the toughest one I think we've had in a long time.
2 for 4 is good. Oh, wait a minute.
No, but Rajitha got 3 for 4. That I'm impressed by.
Evan got it, yeah.
And Evan as well.
I'm curious who made 0 for 4. Like a shout out for you guys.
Yeah. I'm proud of anyone who got 0 for 4. All right. I want to take this to you, Freddie, because I greatly appreciate Exonius sponsoring. Exonius, for those you don't know, really made its name in essentially knowing your asset environment, understanding your asset environment has a lot to do with understanding your risk. So explain, I mean, I'm just giving sort of the precursor, but I'm going to throw this to you, Freddie. How is Axonius addressing this conversation today?
Yeah, so we've been busy at Axonius. So as you described, we did a lot of upfront work working in assets, understanding the business context, the asset context, and in everything that's related to that. And then we came up to ourselves like a while ago, and we're like, hey, maybe we need to actually combine all of that with all the vulnerabilities and the exposures and actually great risk and help companies get away out of that. So we're starting to do this right now. There's a new product we just launched called Axonius Exposures that's focused on that. But yeah, this is what we've been doing these days. The way you can think about this is because all these data sets are in the same place, unprecedented. It's the first time you're starting to see all of these coming all together. It gives you a much better, accurate view of your risk. It's of course not only the only thing you should keep yourself doing. Like Edward said, it's always important to mix up that with intuition, but it gives you a way of starting and doing a fairly hard part, which is taking care of all of these silos.
Okay. So tell me, what's the name? You were saying, what was the name of that product? Exposure? What was it again?
Yeah, Axonius Exposures.
Oh, just Axonius Exposures is the name of it. All right. All right. So if you want to learn about Axonius Exposures, get a little bit more insight. By the way, Axonius was a very early sponsor of the CISO series. Yeah, actually, the day that they won the sandbox at RSA, what was it, 5 years ago, I think, they were a sponsor of the CISO series. It was the same day, and I took full credit for that, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
You should. You know you should, right?
It's actually a funny story. The CEO, Dean, his flight got delayed. He physically couldn't get there in time. So the CMO at the time, Nathan, literally stepped up and did the presentation, and they won. It was kind of impressive. Hey, if you would like a nice warm handoff to the fine people over at Axonius, I just made the poll visible. Just go ahead and answer that, and we will make that happen, and you can check out what they're doing with this exposures, the Axonius exposures, or heck, anything else. So go ahead, go to the poll right now, and click on any of the options, and we'll make the nice warm introduction for you. We'll make it easy for you. That's the idea. All right, let's get to why don't we have any questions? You guys know everything about measuring your own risk? Come on, let's get some questions. She's 0 for 4, Cheryl. I'm sorry, but we're proud of you regardless. All right,
I would wait for the question. Is 50% a passing grade? Because Lyle make 50%. It is in Brazil.
You got a 3 out of 4. We're only impressed with people through. So you got 2 and I got 1, Freddie. That means we all failed.
Oh yeah, right we fail as a team.
We fail as a team. Yeah, let's go down together on the ship. All right. Let's talk about risk signals. And the fact that you have many tools, and I'll start with you, Freddie, is that this one will tell me this one will tell me this. I do not know how to get these two to communicate to each other. And this could be a whole other, I don't know if this is a discussion of SOAR at this point. I don't know. But let's not get too deep into this. But I just want to know, how do you begin getting these signals to make sense to you so you can understand your risk? Where do you begin, Freddie?
Yeah. Of course, I'm fairly high on the Axonius supply, so let's keep that in mind.
Sure.
But I like to think that if these are digital signals, these are provided by tools and your security investments and all those things, there must be a way where actually that data, either through APIs and other means, they come to the same place, they get figured out for you. And these things that sometimes we kind of overload triage, right? You get an alert without any context, and then your teams and yourself, you're doing that manual work and thinking to yourself, hey, why? Why there's a human being on this part of the wire? I like to think that because it's digital, there's a way of doing that. And the way is actually collecting all that upfront to you and bringing to the same place, doing all the aggregation, correlation, the duplication that a machine should do much better than a human. and provide all that insight to you, so you can actually do what truly matters in where human expertise comes in, which is like weighting in, like, hey, based on my experience, based on what I see, even though these systems are saying it's not that serious, honestly, for me it is. We should take this seriously. So that's the way I think about that.
All right, I'm throwing this question from Aman Sood. This is for you, Eddie. I like this one. How and who decides / determines which cyber risks matter most to the business? The steering committee, CRO, another way. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You advise, you explain the business, and the question is who in the business, board, C-suite, whatever, they make the decision. But you're not making the decision, are you, Eddie?
I'm part of the decision, if that helps. So
yeah,
our board approves what we call management committees, where we pick the heads of the departments to join a management committee. And in that management committee, we present what is expected of us as an information security program. For example, we are chartered to do A, B, and C, and D, and E, and F, and whatever those numbers are that go under each letter. There's a lot of stuff that we're chartered to do. And then we explain to them, these are the things that we must share with our examiners, these data sets and these data elements. These are the risks that must be communicated at the board and at the management committee. We'd like to hear from you whether or not you agree with some of these risks that we're identifying. And so we normalize our metrics over time. So we never take metrics unless we've gone through this normalization process. Then we take those metrics and go to the committee and we say, these are the 5 that we feel are adequately identifying the risks that are, facing all the business units here. And do you agree with that? For example, third-party risk. Is third-party risk something that you all want to hear about? And then we show them, here's how we normalize the metrics. Here's the rating that we end up on. Is that what you're in agreement with? And so it is, I think, at the management committee where we get buy-in for the risk, but we bring the content to the management committee for them to agree on what those risk elements are. But we try not to go to them and say, okay, business unit, what do you think it is? Because a lot of times it's very centric and to that business unit as opposed to across the board. If you ask somebody who's in marketing what's their biggest risk, it may not translate to a bank teller, or it may not translate to your contact center. And so we try to bring something that we feel is consistent across the board. Freddie, I know you got some comments.
Freddie, jump in.
Oh, yeah. And I would say that actually, in my experience in talking to people, actually it's important that they are in that decision position, because there is the residual risk of that. Like being part of that decision, whether it's budgetary and whatnot. Like today, when you think about security, and if you're like in the entire thing, like making the decision as well, instead of just advising, is that you kind of are on the spot for things that you cannot do because you don't have the budget or you don't have the resources and all that, because risk is a choice not only when that exposure vulnerability shows up in front of you. It happens before, like budgetary conversations, staffing and all of that. And if they are not being part of the decision, they're not being part of the consequences of that decision, because residual risk will always exist. Like you cannot throw all your money, even if you threw that, there will still be. So I'm a little bit passionate and fired up. That's why I raised my hand on this one, because that responsibility, especially if you're reporting to them, or like if they are the board and you kind of deal with the consequences of their budgetary choices and other things, that's hard. So it's very important to get them actively participating.
By the way, Lewis laughs about this, but he's 100% right. Risk is always a debate, isn't it? When is it not a debate?
It needs to be a debate or a conversation, right? It needs to be discussed. And you may feel something's risky, but what Freddie said is right. Not all risk needs to be mitigated, right? So if you think about what does it cost to manage this risk, if the cost outweighs the actual exposure of the risk, then yes, it's risky, but it's not something that's not palatable for us, right? We're willing to accept portions of that risk. But I think it's a dialogue at all times. I think the challenge there is getting everybody to understand what's risk to the enterprise versus to a department versus to just your team.
Let me ask you, first of all, have you always worked in finance of some sort, Eddie?
No. The majority of my career, yes, but a lot of government work, a lot of consulting as well, but I found myself mostly in the financial sector, but I have done work with technology companies and also with data companies as well.
And I mean, I'm assuming managing risk at a bank is very, very difficult, but correct me if I'm wrong, and again, this is my naive way of looking at it. Isn't it kind of straightforward? We have money, we've got a bank, we've got customers. It's like it's as linear an exchange is happening. Is it conceptually kind of an easy thing to manage, or no? I'm not thinking about this.
No, it's a challenge, right? And I think that's why they hire people, like us to be a part of these organizations. It's because it's not easily translatable. If you think about like a financial company or even a publicly traded company, there are disclosure expectations around risk and how much risk you're willing to take on. I know, and hopefully I'll help this land easily with the audience here. Everybody hears about this term stress testing within a bank, within the financial sector. Not a lot of people really understand what that is. And a lot of people think, it's some, mythical, algorithm that banks use to be able to say whether or not they can withstand some of the most turbulent of times. Stress testing really is about risk discussions. It's let's take our risk models, let's understand when we can break them, and then once they break, are we okay with what happens at that time that they break? And then those results get presented back to management. Are we okay with taking on more credit, more liquidity, more deposits, right? All of those things happen and we can translate them to the business side, but it's a risk discussion that everybody has.
So it's risk around the products too that you're dealing with, because the products have their own specific risk attached to them. Well, this actually it dovetails also into a question that that Lewis asked. If you've seen any successful implementation of cyber risk quantification solutions in the industry, Freddie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I've seen some. It's funny though, because it's a mix of having good algorithms, but actually reiterating over that as a company. I would say that if you see a successful approach, it took a lot of not only using that, but actually educating the rest of the organization and creating like a repeating cycle of reusing that and reiterating on that. The good ones that I saw, they have a fairly good way of combining these three factors we talked about. Like it's not only external risk factors, that are also the internal risk factors and approaches factored in. And most importantly, they are easy to explain to stakeholders. Like because people actually remediating, most of the times they are not in our teams. They are in the internal IT team. They are in the development team, engineering or infrastructure. So these are the places where I could see successful implementations, is when like it's 50% about the solution and kind of having those variables coming in at play, and the 50% with the teams actually taking that and kind of building that risk culture on top of it.
And if you look at what like Brigitte just said in the chat, it's really interesting, right? When you think about the business priorities as well. So now it's not even just operational. It's like what's on the horizon, right? What is it that we're looking towards to deliver? So yeah, it's a challenge, but it's understanding. Not only is it the changing market, not only is it our operating model, but it's what's coming forward from a strategic perspective that we're aiming to deliver against, and all of those play into that.
Yeah, I mean, every time you introduce a new product, it kind of goes both ways. Correct me if I'm wrong. Every time you introduce a new product, you've got a new sort of slate of risks to deal with. But at the same time, if the business is not introducing new products, that becomes a risk in itself. And that's more of a business risk that they then need to put more pressure to introduce a new product, to introduce new risks, to introduce new problems for cybersecurity. Am I getting this all right?
And David, think about this too. Risk is not just the right side of the equation. It's also the left. If you're not taking on enough risk, then are you being innovative enough? Are you being aggressive enough? Are you out there really?
Right. That becomes the flat out business risk of we're not issuing new products. Our competitors are. The business is going to start shrinking.
Exactly.
Yeah. By the way, if you two reminders, everybody, please go check out the poll, and if you would like the nice warm handoff to people like Sonia's, who will help you with understanding your risk. Because if you don't have a good understanding of your assets and your exposures, then you've got not a good, cool understanding of your risk, are you? And also at the bottom of our screen right there, register for the show in 2 weeks, Hacking the Validity of Gen AI. When is Gen AI telling you the truth, or when is it BSing you? That's what we'll discuss in 2 weeks. But right now, we're still in this discussion, and we got more questions here. I'll take a look at another one from Aman Sood. Do you think your current risk register? All right, now I don't want anyone to talk personally about what they have here. So let's talk about past companies here. But do you think a risk register, I'm not going to say your current, a risk register reflects what actually keeps the business awake at night, or is it just a big Excel sheet that no one truly looks at? I fear it's the latter. Freddie, you want to jump on this one?
Okay, I'm laughing here. Yeah, it was a big Excel spreadsheet. I have some friends who were like VLOOKUP ninjas, like truncate ninjas, and they were very good at it. Yeah, not proud.
So you think, like, once it puts in the Excel spreadsheet, we've accepted it, it's gone, I don't have to think about it. It's like the opposite of what keeps you up at night. Is it? What do you think?
Sleep.
Eddie?
I said it's kind of like what puts you to sleep, right? When you think about that Excel spreadsheet. But the way I look at it is, if you have a really good GRC team and your GRC team really understands how to amplify the message of what's in that control catalog and that risk catalog, then I think it's valuable. It's absolutely valuable. We do a strategy session every year in our program, and we've done this with every company that I've been a part of. Part of that is looking at that control catalog, that risk catalog, and saying, okay, where do we have gaps? What's mature? What's not mature? Whatever you need to focus on becomes part of your strategy. So it should drive the program to be able to start to manage the risk or close the gaps if you interact with it. Now, if it's just an Excel spreadsheet, and honestly, everything ends up in an Excel spreadsheet at some point in time. If it's just an Excel spreadsheet that no one's looking at, of course, it's going to be overlooked. But it's something that somebody brings forward on a repeatable basis. Maybe it's quarterly, twice a year, annually, and it helps drive input into your strategy. You are managing risk, and it's conveying it to the right audience as well.
All right. I'll tell this quick story, and it's going to dovetail this question from Gary Longside. So I talked to one CISO a while ago who asked the team, how long could you go without the internet? And they just shot from their hip, and they go, I don't know, 48 hours, 24, I would think it was 24, 48 hours. They just kind of, whatever, 24. And then they actually had an outage, and they realized they couldn't be out for an hour. Now, I know in a bank, it's far different than that. They, uptime is critical. So that becomes a situation of, when you ask someone a question who really doesn't know, they often underestimate. So Gary Longside, this is quite long, so I'm going to read the whole thing out. What does one do as a risk and analysis security vendor, skew Freddie here, when the client underestimates the most common risks? I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the exposure thing. I'm like, don't trust me. We scanned you. Take a look. Isn't that what we get down to there? Yes? Freddie?
Yeah, I would say so. Like what you can provide to your customers are always suggestions, right? Like you see that from many places. Like, let's take good examples. Threat intel. Threat intelligence will look at external factors, what they're seeing in the network or other like attackers, adversaries, and then they will provide you a suggestion that you can follow or not. That's how far vendors can go. They can give you suggestions. You use them or you don't, but that's how far, unfortunately. But I like to think I'm hopeful that as signals get better and they get more interesting in terms of your internal business situation in asset context, those can greatly help you. Those suggestions can become more reasonable, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I like Andrew's 3.2 second response. That's phenomenal. I think
He figured it out. He
that's
knows the answers.
it's quick. You know,
There you go.
I look
3.2
at it this way. I'll take accountability here. If someone's not managing risk, did I tell the story correctly? Was my delivery where it needed to be? Because if the risk is not being managed, then I'm gonna look at myself and say, okay, what happened that the message didn't land where it needed to land? So I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
A vulnerability report is full of risk identification.
Mhm.
And in that report, there might be something that says you're using TLS 1.1. Please fix it. It's a high vulnerability.
Mhm.
But if I didn't say, well, wait a minute, TLS 1.1 on a credit card system can expose a product that's generating, $20 million in revenue a month. It's going to take us 3 hours to fix this risk. It's really important that we fix the risk. 3 hours saves, protects that potential revenue generating product. It's a better story than just sending over the risk, the vulnerability metrics. And so, I think the security program really needs to understand if a risk is not being mitigated or it's just being ignored, change the story, revisit how you're communicating that risk.
That's a really, really good point right there. All right, get your bad. I need bad ideas here. We need to play our next game. Rich, throw them to me in the back channel, please. All right, no more questions here, so I'm going to my own list. Please get your questions in. All right, here's what we got. So one of the things we talk about risk is manage risk until it's, economically viable for you. Like you don't want to pay, spend $1,000 to protect $20 worth of Twinkies, that kind of a thing. So is that an easy point to find, Eddie?
It could be. It could. It's one of those. I hate to give those answers where it depends, but it depends.
It does. I know. Understand.
It depends, right? I think when you're looking for risk, there's ways that you can approach it, but I think it does really depend on the organization. I don't know how to look at that without the let's have a discussion conversation around what we want to do around spend. First of all, if you have X amount of budget, how much of it should be allocated towards risk management versus growth versus innovation? And if we don't know where the ceiling is at first, it really becomes a challenge because then everything becomes a debate. But if you have funding to manage risk and that funding is not going to change, then you elevate the risk that you really want to address first versus the ones that don't elevate to that area where the spend's warranted. But having that understanding up front at the beginning of the year saying, hey, I'm going to spend $10 million on risk management this year. And if there's $20 million worth of risk available, then we have to figure out, okay, how do you prioritize what's going to be managed versus not?
All right. Let's get to this game right now.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, we got some good.
There were some good bad ideas here, by the way.
There are some good bad ideas here. I kind of like this one. Here we go. We're gonna throw this one up first here. Freddie, I'm gonna make you answer this one first. Reduce your staff that can identify the risks while expanding your organization's footprint. So you get rid of those people, but you I guess hire more to help you expand your organization's footprint. So you have a bigger area and less identification of risk on this area. Why do you want to do this? And thank you to Daniel Ryan who submitted this.
Why do I want to do this?
Come on, you want to do this?
I want to do this because expanding the footprint is always a good idea. Like you're expanding business, you're doing more things. So like risk is always
we're good here so far. Come on, keep going there. Come on, Freddie, you can do this.
All right, man. I don't know. Like I woke up a little bit slow, maybe.
All right, I'm taking this to you, Eddie. Why are you going to do this?
Well, we've adopted a lot of AI agents. Agentic AI is just key now. And so why do I need more, personnel when I have AI agents that can just support the growth of the organization?
Yeah, just rely on the AI. Yeah. Just rely on. Good job. All right, let's go to the next one here. We're going to go with, I like this one from Aman Sood. Recency bias. Forget trends and emerging threats. Only prioritize fixing things that just happened. I'm going to say this does happen. In fact, Aman Sood is given two bad ideas that are actually probably happened in one of his environments. Aman, do you want to admit that? Yes. Eddie, you go first on this one.
I love this. This is great. I think I think attention right now is so short among people that why would you focus on anything in the past when there's a new trend coming up, right? If we all still cared about MySpace and focused on MySpace, it's been gone for a long time now. Everybody's on TikTok. So yeah, forget the trends and just emerge.
There's another good way of handling this too. Freddie, let's see if you'll do this. Why do you want to do this?
Yeah, that's a great idea, honestly. Like we're searching for focus. There's no better way of focusing than just, locking in on that, like ignore the rest. Like the rest is noise. Let's go on recency. Let's go on vibes.
I'm going to throw this one out here. I'm going to give you some credit for that. This just came in from Lisa Ackerman. This is a good one. All right. Keep your risks separate in silos across the organization so teams are not aware of these risks. Only cyber teams need to know about cyber risks, for example. All right, Eddie, you're nodding your head. Why do you want to do this one?
Phenomenal, Lisa. No one likes something better than a risk that's just sprung upon them in front of their manager. So I think it's secret. And you make sure that you have all the details that no one else has. And so when you share that, not only do you look smart, you might have the answer as well.
All right. Freddie, why do you want to do this?
Isolation of concerns, man. That same focus idea, just spreading love throughout the organization. Hey, guys, don't care about it.
All right. We give it to you. People like that one, Freddie. They like it.
Yeah.
All right. We're taking the crowd out of it. Whoops. All right. All right. Great job, everyone. Thank you very much for that good one at the last minute there, Lisa. I greatly appreciate. And I do remember Short Attention Span Theater, Andrew Aiken, very entertaining. I will also say the recency bias ones. Hold it. So just go with me on this for a second. Freddie, I'm going to start with you. If they deal with what's most recent, at least they're doing something. Is there value to the doing something? Obviously versus nothing at all. I mean, and often recency is usually what's happening right now. I mean, I don't think it's that far off. Okay, play with me on this one. What do you think?
I think that when you start thinking that security has this short blanket and then you throw over your head like your feet are not covered and all, like when you're just using recency, you're stealing from somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. Like attackers, while like recency helps a lot, like, hey, this is a new thing. Like, of course, I should try that first because that there are more places to cover vulnerabilities and all. We know like it's a lot about path of least friction for attackers. So by just looking at recency or ignoring that other thing, there's a reason why most of the incidents related to vulnerabilities being exploited, they are actually not with critical, they're with medium and highs. And that speaks to it.
So I will actually throw this quote from Rajitha Marur. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Adapt and evolve risk metrics with risk thresholds based on business priorities and changing markets. That's a little bit of that is recency bias with changing markets, but that's a good thing, isn't it, Eddie?
It can be, right? And again, risk is not static. It's not that, once you've made a determination of what your risk appetite is, it's not that it's not movable. It just forces a discussion to happen. So you're right. If you think about, if you have a risk appetite statement and in that risk appetite statement, you have your risk threshold set and you never want to elevate above a certain level. But then all of a sudden the business change and all of a sudden there's more things and your level changes. Well, then go back to management committee and say, I'd like to reevaluate our current thresholds. We want to make some adjustments because of these factors. And so I think it's worth the conversation to be able to have some dynamic opportunities there or options to be able to manage those risk thresholds.
Yeah, actually just to add something to that, like maybe there's recency related to like what's the new shiny vulnerability or risk, but there's kind of continuity in the business. Like there's a continuous threat and exposure management program or like changes in macro environment and things. I really like that. So yeah, is recency important, but not only to one kind of signal, maybe.
But is that a problem for security professionals in general? And I'm going to quote something that I quoted off of Reddit, so I don't know who actually said it, but it's a line I've quoted multiple times, and it has to do with the Black Hat conference. And this Redditor said, the thing you were worried about before you went to Black Hat is the same thing you should be worried about after Black Hat. And Black Hat's whole point is the recency bias game. Like, here's what's happening right now and cool and new and stuff. And yeah, you want to learn about that stuff, but is that what I should be really worried about, Eddie?
I think if you do a root cause analysis of what happens and how tech debt becomes where it becomes, it's because of people just lose sight of what they were doing and they focus on the shiny object. So yeah, I think the reality is the challenges you had before Black Hat will still persist after Black Hat. Now you might have more things on your mind, but you can't lose focus of really what you're trying to manage. And no one likes to fall into the tech debt storm, right? Mm-hmm. Because once you're in there, it's so challenging to get out. So yes, allow for some flexibility and allow for some recent bias, but don't forget, 80% of your environment still needs taking care of as business as usual requirements.
All right. Lisa Ackerman asked this question. How do you set your risk tolerance levels within your organization? What artifacts do you use to influence this decision? This is a great question, and I'm stunned it wasn't brought up until now. So, Lisa, thank you so much for asking it. I will start with you, Eddie, on this.
Great question. And here's what we do in the organizations that I've always been a part of. I don't set them. I grab the metrics, I look at the trends, and the trends define what the business operates in. And so sometimes it's just acknowledging how the business has been performing and say, okay, it looks like for the last 12 months we've been operating at this level. This looks to be our appetite. This looks to be where we're comfortable at. Are you okay with if we start to define this now? But I wouldn't want to set a risk appetite statement or a threshold without understanding the business performance, because I may say, hey, we got to patch vulnerabilities within 7 days. And the business may have been patching them within 3 days. Well, guess what? They have a lower appetite than I do. Or inversely, I could say 7 days and they haven't patched them in 30 days and they seem to be fine with 30 days. So I think it really is understanding the business operating model, understanding and getting comfortable with the metrics that are already present.
Just to answer Lisa's question, if I can sort of adapt here, is she wanted to know what are the artifacts. So it's really, well, look at the business last 12 months. Yep. Did it operate at the level we wanted it to? Did it take on risks that damaged us? And if not, so essentially adjust from that. Are we below or above where? But I mean, assume every business that was great. We want more.
Well, it could be that, and think about the qualifying criteria that are associated to this risk. Say we patch within 30 days, but we had 30 outages. Are we okay with 30 outages? No, we need to patch more often. We can get the outages down. So that's where you can make those adjustments. So there's a bunch of indicators that can help you tune it, but the operating model is the operating model. This is how we function for the year. Now, to your point, David, were we okay with that? Were we okay operating that way?
All right, Freddie, I'm taking this to you. Is there some way that Axonius actually helps in this sort of measuring these artifacts so this can be a little bit more quantified? Yes?
Yes, there are ways. Axonius connects to all the systems you have, whether these are to find assets, to find risk, exposures, vulnerabilities, and all. Many of these assets, they will carry information that can help you quantify that. So let's take a good example of that. Your CMDB might be telling a lot about the business importance of an asset that carries vulnerability and is exposed. Let's call a crown jewel. Or maybe it's your AD domain controller, or is your Exchange server. Many of these information or data sets, they will be directly proxied and associated with business importance. Another great example, let's say you tag your servers in production in AWS with a PCI DSS tag, or your rubric tells something about the importance of that thing. So those also can be carried over in order to do your calculus automatically.
All right, let me go to this question that came in from Lewis. And this, we've done shows on this. Merger and acquisition means introducing a big chunk of unknowns. That's scary. So it's like acquiring another business with its own problems. Like, what did I just swallow kind of a thing? I got to imagine this is like a a very valid reason to be getting a asset management tool like Axonius in place, because that can start answering that very question. Yes, Freddie?
Yeah, I would say yes, of course, always high on the Axonius supply. But it's one of those things that we need to realize as security teams, right? We get to inherit all the decisions in terms of technology in cyber that all the other teams are doing, whether these are M&A activities or like a new team, business area of the business introducing a new technology. And here's the thing with that, like unlike other teams in IT or many teams in IT, like development and engineering, that can say, you know what, we're going to standardize in Kubernetes across these cloud providers, and you get like consistency in your favor. We don't get that. We just get to inherit and safeguard to the best of our capacities. So M&A is a big moment where you see that fairly significant, because all of a sudden, like, hey, by date X, everything comes in, whether you like it or not. But that happens every year within all the different business units. So like providing a way where you can start seeing and acting on those holistically, no matter what's the technology being thrown in front of you. That's the way we believe we can help organizations and teams. Recognizing that inconsistency is extremely important for security, because it changes the game. It's unfair to compare security to DevOps and saying, why you don't do like DevOps? Like, I wish I had CI/CD for all the things you throw at me, guys. So it's important to have technology to help you being recognition and work around those things.
All right. We're going to close this up, and I'm going to come back with one question for both of you. I'm going to say this now. If you have not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen to register for our show in 2 weeks, do that right this second. Please do that. And also go to our poll, the little icon on the right that has a little 3 bars, and go ahead and click on that. And if you want to have a nice warm handoff to the people at Axonius, just respond to one of those things in the poll, and we will make that happen. All right, I'm coming right back, just doing some closing items here. And then we're also going to stick around for our discussion on Discord. That's going to happen just in a few minutes. All right, hey, huge thanks to Axonius for sponsoring us and being a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series. We greatly appreciate it. Hey, starting in a little over an hour and a half from now, we'll have Bethany DeLude, who we've had on before, CISO Emeritus. She is awesome. Our producer, Rich Stroffolino, will be hosting Cybersecurity Headlines. That happens over on YouTube, and we have a nice discussion about the day's news, or the week's news, and that goes on today. So please stick around for that. Also, stick around for a meetup. Let's change that link at the bottom of the screen now to the meetup link. Oh, by the way, please test that link right now. We had a problem last time. People couldn't go to Discord. There was an error message. I think those links expire over time. But come and join us for a meetup. We'll have a chat. The lower left is where you can control your audio and video as well. So go ahead and click on the link. You can do that actually right now. Would you like to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday? Our next available one will be more than a month from now, May 30th. So if you would like to get in on Super Cyber Friday and participate, please just ping us at info@cisoseries.com. All right, I'm going to start with you, Eddie. We really literally just in 30 seconds, I'm going to quickly ask you, what have we not discussed that we should have discussed in our show about essentially understanding your risk?
I would say that just having an alignment with not only your stakeholders, but with your management team and your board. I think there's expectations around there that not managers are not only doing what they're doing within the department, but what's good for the company. So that executive and board conversation is important.
Discussions is key. That we definitely learned from this show. Freddie, what have we not discussed that we should have been discussing?
Driving accountability down the line. Because once you lock into the risk and you mobilize the teams, they are all caring about other metrics that are not yours, whether it's IT or developers, and you get on that limbo where everybody agrees and nods along is important, but you're the one held accountable and no one is doing anything because they're busy, rightfully so. Everybody's trying to do the best work by the business, but security sometimes is overlooked when it comes to getting the help.
Getting accountability, getting people to sign off on it. And I've heard this, let me say to you, Eddie, I've heard this from many CISOs. While you as a security professional may see something as risky, you are not as ingrained with the business as, the people running the business. So as long as you explain the risk, they understand the risk, you're okay if they accept a level of risk that, as a security professional, they're like, oh no, we should do this. I mean, yes. I mean, most CISOs I speak to say yes, as long as it's understood.
Yeah, there's a level of risk that you live in, and that's just normal, and it's par for the business. And so just understanding what's acceptable, what's within your appetite as well as an individual is helpful, but you always know that risk is going to be there.
All right. So everybody, we're finishing the show right now. Click the link at the bottom of the screen to join us on Discord. Thank you, Freddie. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you to Axonius as well. And thank you to our audience. We love this. I always say the chat room is half the show, and it is half the show, if not more. We greatly appreciate it. In fact, you're funnier than we are, so that's what I greatly appreciate. I've been saying this. The smartest and funniest group of cybersecurity professionals come here. So if other people want to be, get the heat wave experience off of that, they have to come to this show. Yes. As security professional, we shall be the friend to the business people. Good point, Louis. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Josh, please take us out.